listening to the All Things Geekery podcast. This is episode 19 of season 3, and this one's on The Mandalorian. I'm your host, Detached.
Hey guys, and I'm Victus.
Well, we want to welcome all our listeners back to the show, and if it's your first time with us, then we thank you for stopping in and joining us. We hope you guys enjoy this episode.
Long ago, in an episode far, far away, we explore The Mandalorian, our new miniseries covering the mysterious and also fascinating character from The Mandalorian on Disney+. We'll be covering the first 4 episodes of the show and discussing what our favorite parts were. So, yeah, Mandalorian has been here we're now, as of this recording, 6 episodes deep, but we're only going to be covering the first 4. And it is a phenomenon.
It is a phenomenon, and we were actually going to be recording this 2 weeks ago, but Victus and I have come down with the Black Plague over the last couple of weeks, and
basically, yeah,
you know, almost on the deathbed. No, I'm joking. We had a head cold, but we're big babies when we're sick, and I'm pretty sure you didn't want to hear us coughing and hacking and, you know, blowing all the head junk out of our noses. So 2 weeks later, we are finally getting to record one of the most exciting podcast episodes I think we've had to date. So let's get started. And I think we're going to jump some things off with a little bit of history of Mandalore, because I think we have all got to go back, way back, and talk a little bit about the lore.
Well, and I mean, in the original trilogy, I don't even think we got mention of a Mandalorian until maybe the books came into play. And then we realized that Boba Fett ended up being a Mandalorian, I think. If that serves correct. Or it was Jango that was Mandalorian.
Jango that was Mandalorian. Boba
inherited his armor.
Yeah, Boba inherited his armor, but Boba was actually not a Mandalorian. He wasn't even tied to their clan. Yeah.
Of course, he wore the armor that we saw in the original trilogy. We found out his father, Jango, in the prequels, and from there, people started to get fascinated. You also go into the books.
Yeah.
And books, I think, talk about Boba actually going back and becoming a Mandalorian. He goes through the rites of passage, right? And gets adopted into the clan ship that is a Mandalorian.
Yeah, kind of what we know of today anyways. So,
yep.
I think the very first time we ever heard of the Mandalorians, they made a debut in a comic book series that was published back in 1983. I was 2 when this comic book came out. So you do the math, you'll figure it out. It was Star Wars number 68, but that was the very first time we ever heard about the Mandalorians. It was all from a comic book series, which is crazy.
Yep. From there, I mean, it just expanded. We found out that home planet of Mandalorian was Mandalore. It's their home, their birthplace, right? It's where all the Mandalorians like to go back to. It's where everything's based at. No matter whose ownership of it is, everybody goes back there.
It's funny just reading some of the lore and stuff on Mandalore. They had a moon called Concordia, and they had a mining settlement out on this moon, where a lot of the Mandalorian warriors had actually been exiled to, which is interesting. So, these warriors being exiled to a mining settlement, it's strange to me because, the Mandalorians were quote unquote considered the greatest warriors in the galaxy. Their warriors were quite skilled in combat, and here they are getting exiled to a mining community.
Yeah, I mean, even if you go into now legends, but it was lore, they go all the way back to the Old Republic time where they were brought in as, I mean, they rivaled Jedi as the fiercest warriors in the galaxy, and some say they could even beat a Jedi, mostly because of the technology that they used, and then by the metal that they use could easily counter a Jedi.
It could withstand it, yeah. But you are definitely right on the technology. Their ability to hone in on technology was crazy, and their suits housed so much tech, so many different weapons. It was amazing what they could hold on board their suits and still be mobile.
I mean, you could almost say from a clanship standpoint, they were kind of looked at as when you add in their armor, it was like the Star Wars Iron Man of sorts, from an entire planet of them, right, of the clans combined together. But then also, they came to we saw much more of them in the Clone Wars series.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
TV show, like much more in that, and then extended a little bit into Rebels, where we find out is Mandalore's largely uninhabitable desert. Caused by war with the Jedi.
Oh, so that's actually a really kind of cool segue, because the whole uninhabitable piece, that was basically, it was almost a civil war in a sense between the Mandalorians and the Jedi. I don't know. There's the tech that happened between the Mandalorians, the whole Jedi outbreak. They basically destroyed this planet. So, which is crazy.
Yep. But they're also very rich in their culture about coming back to, and keeping together.
Yeah, that brings up a cool point. And just to give some throwback to the show and the way the director Jon Favreau has really done things, for anybody that's a huge fan of Western films and kind of the old school samurai. We're talking like 1950s samurai films. I think the show really kind of pays homage to some of that movie making. It has that old Western feel to it. The Mandalorian walking through the desert scenes with the handheld pistol and just his cape blowing in the wind. It really just kind of gives that old school standoff of an old Western, which I love.
Well, I mean, that's what they were going for with this, and we saw this, the writing on the wall, per se, going into Mandalorian with how he was getting inspiration for it, and some of the leaked, or even just the little trailer tidbits here, and like you said, the initial just poster of it. We already got a sense of where this was going, where it's giving off the sense of a lone person. He's not necessarily isolated, but he does a lot by himself. We can kind of take it from there to go a logical step of something will change to change him from a what is a modern day bounty hunter. We can kind of go ahead and feel that out, that something's going to change and make him a multi-seasonal character that we need to follow along to figure out what happens to him.
Yeah.
Instead of just a bad guy, he does stuff, it comes back and, or he's a morally ambiguous person, right?
Yeah, that's a good way to put that.
A morally ambiguous person where he just goes for the job, right? Because we knew he was going to be a bounty hunter because the time period that they're going into and the area that they talked about, it's a lawless area.
Yeah.
So
you said time period. I think for a lot of the listeners out there, I think we probably need to mention time frame as well for the Mandalorian. So let's talk time frame for just a bit before we jump into the actual chapter breakdown. If you look at, let's talk the end of the Return of the Jedi to the time span we have from there to the Force Awakens, which is quite a bit of time. We're not talking, a couple of years here. We're talking a few years between when we see kind of the ending scene of the Return of the Jedi to the opening scene with Finn and Rey and the new gang that we've got now. So where does the Mandalorian fit in that time frame?
Well, I mean, you take place about 5 years after the second battle of the Death Star, fall of Death Star 2, however you want to call it, Battle of Endor.
Yeah, the Battle of Endor,
right?
Really. Yeah.
So that's where it takes place. The New Republic is in its infancy. It hasn't been able to establish
Right.
its governance ground into all sectors that the Empire had control of. So you got this, especially in the areas farthest from the core worlds, becomes it's just a lawless world.
Yeah. And the Empire's basically
Crime
no
come
more.
in.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, tons of crime. And but that's really what I kind of like about what they're doing here with all the different episodes is, I mean, we're getting to see some of the uncharted territory of the Star Wars lore. We are going to some familiar places, but I think they've done a lot with the time frame that we've got. Like you said, it's 5 years. So I mean, 5 years, there's a lot that can happen. But if you look at the timelines of where we were with Luke and Leia and their bunch to Finn and Rey, those timelines are still happening with Finn and Rey and all them. They're still there, and Leia and that gang right after Return of the Jedi. So I like how they've woven this into that same time frame. But you are right. The whole galaxy is basically in shambles at this point. I mean, the Empire's all but been destroyed. I mean, there's little tidbits and pockets of them left around. We see that in some of the early episodes of The Mandalorian with stormtroopers still around, and I think even some of the people that had allegiances to the Empire have all but become kind of outlined in the different worlds.
Yep. Warlords, and they've consolidated their power into small little sections. So we almost see that. I mean, we can go right into, before we get to the point, I mean, that's jumping ahead. We can jump right into the episode 1.
Yeah.
And how it starts off. And it basically starts off just like we see in all the posters.
Yeah.
A lone Mandalorian walking
into the bar
a
scene.
cantina.
Yeah. Yeah, I love what they did there because it really set the tone for the show and how. I mean, don't get me wrong. I like the idea of having a season-based Star Wars show, and I think we're going to get a lot more as the seasons go. Like you said, this show has really become a phenomenon. But when the Mandalorian walked into the bar scene, the doors opened up and he walked in, it was like, oh, watch out, he just showed up. Because there's something about him. It's different, and I think even the people in the bar scene even knew it.
Yeah, I mean, from across the episodes and even before that, Mandalorians were and still are considered fierce warriors, right?
Oh, absolutely.
They're legendary. I mean, we see evidence of their renown throughout the coming episodes that we talk about, and so these guys knew it.
Yeah,
didn't know why he was there, but he grabbed the attention of the room. And of course, some big boss guy decides to be all bad and tough to him, right?
Which is funny. So a couple of Easter eggs to kick this first bit off with our chapters. If you look back at that bar scene, so the bearded man that actually kind of picks the fight with Mando, he is actually speaking Huttese, which is the language of the Hutts. I don't know how many people actually caught on to that. I actually had to go back and re-listen to it again after there's so many little tidbits in the show. You kind of pause and you go back and rewatch and you're like, whoa, how did I miss that? But yeah, he's actually speaking Huttese.
Yep, which is kind of tells also the domain, because usually that doesn't come in till the Hutts have taken over that area, and it shows the actual, I want to say, geographical area of the universe that they're in, which has been just noted to say the Outer Rim area, which by default is lawless. So it was really cool that they kept with the Huttese language there.
Yeah, love that. Another cool callback they had was the mention of Life Day. And if you are a true Star Wars fan, then you've probably heard the word Life Day before. So Life Day in the Star Wars universe is actually the equivalent to our modern day Christmas. It was a time of resting and having fun with your loved ones. The Life Day word, and it was actually kind of the first time we ever heard it, was introduced via a TV production way back in the day. And it was kind of a special that they were doing for promotion on Star Wars called Life Day.
Ah, okay. I was wondering if it tied into that or not.
It did. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
I've kind of erased any type of TV production Star Wars from recollection.
They were terrible back in the day. They were terrible. But
we have the great renown that is the holiday special. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They were the production levels back in the day were not that good when it came to TV. But I thought that was a really cool callback to kind of some neat Star Wars lore. And I honestly think this just kind of pays a little bit of respect to the director and Disney for really digging deep into kind of the roots of Star Wars and digging down into some of the fan favorite stuff that's out there.
Yeah, and it kind of, like you mentioned it, all the call-outs, you get these little tidbits, right?
Yeah.
They could be the main story, and if you blink, you missed it, but it was actually a really cool call-out Easter egg throughout all the episodes. I don't think hasn't been one episode that hasn't had really cool callbacks and connections to these different sections of Star Wars lore. For example, one of the things we see on the Mandalorian himself is his rifle.
Yeah.
Very unique rifle.
It's extremely unique. Yeah.
Compared to, and we see its lethality. Is that a word? Sounds like this word. I feel like that's a word. That's a word. That's a word.
It is definitely a word. It is a very appropriate word for this weapon as well.
Yes.
Because it obliterates things.
Disintegrates. There's gone.
Yeah, just gone. And I do like that you have added the name of this rifle. So I searched and could not find the name of this thing. I could not think of it for the life of me.
Yeah, but apparently it's a modified Amban rifle.
Yeah.
Amban? I want to say that's how.
Yep, Amban.
Okay. But apparently this rifle has its all the way into what you called out there, the Life Day Special.
Yeah.
Or modified version of it.
Yeah. So Boba Fett was actually back in this TV special, the kind of the first airing of this. Boba Fett was actually seen wielding this weapon. Now, we didn't know really where it was going to go from there. This TV special was aired back in 1979 or 1980, if I remember right. Maybe even 81. I can't remember the actual date that I found on it, but a long time ago. But it's cool that they've gone so far back into some of the roots and the lore to find this information.
Absolutely, and pulling from even the obscure references.
Oh yeah.
I wonder if we'll actually get more history in the movie or in the TV or streaming shows that is the Mandalorian about the rifle. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. About like where he got it, did he inherit it? Is it just a item that he has? But it seems to be a very sought after piece of equipment.
Well,
and very like he doesn't want to share it type situation
no.
too. Can't blame him.
That is a prized weapon of his for sure. So
Yep.
And you made a good call out with the whole history piece, and I think Disney has such a good point to be able to make with these different shows that they're pulling out right now, because they can really dig into a lot of different aspects of the Star Wars canon and pull them into the shows, whereas you're kind of limited with the films because it's such a big production and such a long time to make a movie. And it's a little different with the TV shows. I know that The Mandalorian is a really big production. You've still got the production cost. You've got the long time frames. But with them being episodic versus, a 3-hour movie, I think you can do more with it because you can explore a lot of different timelines as long as they pull those stories together. I think they'll do good.
Yep. Before we actually jump into the meat and potatoes of episode 1 or chapter 1, another little tidbit we saw in that was very fascinating, a call back to Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
The door security droid.
Yep.
That's there.
Yeah, he was
I
always.
couldn't help but call back to that exact scene in Return of the Jedi where it pops out, talks to C-3PO, and then it laughs as it goes back in the... I
Yep,
fully expected a laugh on it when it saw the place card that the Mandalorian held up.
I did too. He's actually seen a couple of different times in the show so far too. So, and
Yep.
he has a name. There is an actual name for this door security droid, and I cannot remember it for the life of me right now. It's like JT788 or something like that.
TT-8L-Y7 Gatekeeper Droid.
That is it. TT. Yeah.
TT.
So
Yep.
interesting little fan tidbits there. But I think it's time to jump into the meat and potatoes of chapter one. And one of the very first things that really caught my attention was that they talked about foundlings. And I
Mm-hmm.
love that they went there because not too many people know what a foundling is. And from a Mandalorian standpoint, a foundling is a orphaned child. So Mando, if you guys didn't know this, was not actually born a Mandalorian. He is an outsider and was orphaned, but he was actually adopted into their culture and became a Mandalorian warrior. Thought that was really cool how they brought that in.
Yeah, absolutely. And it you see when we can jump through when he gets the first the Beskar plate to get turned into armor. They call out the foundlings there, but then we get glimpses back into his time on. We're going to assume Mandalore during the time of these galactic civil war between the Republic and the Separatists.
Yeah.
Because we see clankers there,
Yep.
or super battle
Super
droids,
battle droids, yep.
for like a split second, and we can tell the timeline that's happening there. And we can assume the kid in those is him. From there, it's just a connection of the dots that he was adopted as part of the Mandalorian culture, and
Yeah.
thereby where he's at today.
Yep. And again, really love the timeline of what they're doing here. I think it was great that they started with the whole foundling, so they give a really good foundation. They start some things off. You get a little bit of the mystery around who Mando is. They don't really explain a whole lot of his childhood, but you get some little flashbacks, like you said. And then they kind of kick things off a little slower in this first episode, so you get to see some more things. One of them being the actual guild of the Mandalorians. So you get to kind of find out who some of these Mandalorians are, what they do, and they've got a code. And I like that because the Mandalorians being a warrior, that means there's some honor. There is a code that they have to live by. And I like what they've done with that. It's kind of cool.
Right. And even part of that, because he's part of the Bounty Hunters Guild, there's another code on top of that
Yeah.
that he has to follow with his bounties, and we see that in different aspects throughout the episodes. We see that the armor that he's wearing is not Beskar armor. It looks like just a molded in the same way as a Mandalorian would have his armor, but it's definitely not that type of armor, just due to it can take damage, really.
Yeah. And he's replacing it. I mean, we do learn quickly that he is looking to, get the money to be able to replace it. Because we end up meeting the blacksmith in the film, the show anyways, pretty quickly, which I liked. I love the fact that there's kind of this mysterious relationship between Mando and this, blacksmith that is now making his armor. So if you guys didn't know, this metal that he actually gains from the bounties, or the bounty specifically that we got to see, was gathered from the Great Purge. So that's where this metal's coming from that he's getting his armor made of. It's extremely rare and extremely valuable, which, if you look at the rest of the Mandalorian armor that's in the show, he stands out. There's nobody else that looks like him.
Yep. Absolutely. They all have modified of different armor sets.
Oh, yeah.
And really, that in the episode 1, we get the first mention of the Beskar, and the renown to that type of armor and reason why it was mined and kept part of the Empire.
Yeah.
It was the only thing that could, I mean, you are basically impervious to blaster fire,
Yeah.
to even up to possibly heavy blaster fire, and very resistant to lightsabers.
Yeah.
That's why they were so deadly, are so much of a hindrance, good warriors against the Jedi and Sith alike. They sometimes they didn't choose a side.
No.
They just wanted to be left alone.
They just wanted to be left. They were very neutral, but I do think a lot of them had their, they had their vows. They had definitely had things that they were extremely loyal to, and you didn't mess with that because they would take care of business and not let you get in the way of the things that they were loyal to, for sure. So.
Yep. And with that, you mentioned the blacksmith, which she immediately seems, and you get the feel of kind of not maybe a leader type sense, or a guide, a sage.
Yeah,
keeps everybody in line.
I think sage. Yeah, sage is a good point to that. There was even a bit where she kind of reminded a few of them what the code was, like why we still do this. To me, there's kind of an underlying, like, why she is a blacksmith. There seemed to be an underlying bit there. Maybe it was rage or vengeance. Maybe she was trying to get back at the Empire. I don't know. There just seemed to me, you could kind of tell that there was, she really took pride in her craft and what she did. So the blacksmith has been a cool character for me. And we'll talk a little bit about kind of her helmet and some of the colors and stuff on the Mandalorian armor here in a little bit too.
Yep, because that is actually very important. But I think we get to that in episode 3 when we see a lot, much more of them.
I won't take us down the wild goose chases. Next little bit though, this is an interesting character for me. So we're going to talk about Grief Karga for a minute, which he is the Mandalorian guild leader, and to me, I did not like the character at all. Personally, for me, the actor they chose to play this, he just had this scoundrelish rogue agent type personality, which I get it. You're a bounty hunter leader, so I'm pretty sure you're a snake in the grass, and you're a little manipulative. Yeah. And I think from that standpoint, he pulled the persona off. But the character, to me, the actor just didn't fit the character for some reason. Personally, for me, so I think it's going to be interesting how they bring him in, because he's clearly not dead, and you haven't seen him past this chapter 1 into any of the other episodes anyways, other than a couple of holograms that they've showed. So he's kind of a question mark for me. Like, what are they going to do with this guild leader? How's he gonna play into Mando's story? That piece is kind of a big question mark for me.
Yeah, I mean, he's also, the reason why he's in, for one, he has a great respect for the Mandalorian, because out of all his people that pick up pucks or bounties on other people, the Mando delivers, right?
Extremely.
Even so much that he feels good enough to present Mando with a direct meeting with this apparent Imperial warlord, or what's left of his command.
Which isn't a whole lot. Just a handful of stormtroopers in probably the roughest condition I've seen stormtroopers be in, because we've only seen them pristine, and these were desert rough. Yeah, well-worn uniform, armor pieces, some even broken. You could just tell that they had been through, the ringer.
Yeah,
for sure.
But so he goes through there, he gets the contract, goes on his way, and goes to a planet for which it almost has a very Tatooine type feel to it, but more mountainous.
It is a desert planet for sure, which, there's more than one desert style planet in the Star Wars galaxy. Not everything is Tatooine by any means, but it did have that feel to it, the way they made the scenery and everything. This was an interesting bounty that he had for sure.
Yeah.
And,
And it's one where we meet probably the second favorite character of the show,
oh yeah, absolutely.
the,
He
the
is.
meeting of Kuil.
Yeah, yeah,
So a nomad, keep by himself, Ugnaught,
yeah.
which
He's an Ugnaught, which is not a rare species in Star Wars. We have seen him before, but
yep. I think we've only seen besides the animated series, we've only seen them on Bespin in episode 5 when we go to Cloud
the Cloud
go
City,
to Cloud City. Yeah.
when they're working on it's basically the scrap lines.
Yep. But instead of the interesting language that they use, this one spoke Basic, which for those out there, it's what they call English in Star Wars universe, Basic.
Basic. Yes.
So but his speech, I have spoken. You hear that a lot, but it's just really good because it's just kind of, all right, we're done. We're gonna go.
I have spoken.
So, I have spoken.
That is the one term out of the entire movie that I absolutely grabbed a hold of. So I told my wife, anytime my kids come and ask me something, and I've already answered, I'm just going to say I have spoken.
Perfect. This probably been used already a lot.
Oh, I'm sure. Absolutely.
But through that, he directs it to the city, and we enter what everybody was immediately assumed was IG-88, helping out and already there on scene to do this exact same bounty.
Yeah.
That the Mandalorian was on, is actually not. I think it's IG-11.
It's IG-11. So a few more, few more difference on the number, but same model of robot. Mm-hmm. This one was kind of funny because anytime he got in a sticky situation, he's like self-destruct. Mando kept saying, no, I don't need you to stop that. I don't need you to self-destruct. So
yeah, we can get out of this, right?
Yeah, we got this. We can handle it.
But it was just interesting that he was so sought after. Part of his programming was to get renowned for himself, even when the Mandalorian said, "Hey, let's split it."
Yeah, he wanted that reputation for a robot.
Yep.
That was pretty interesting. However they're programmed, especially for being a bounty hunter. And the best part out of that entire episode was the ending. It really was.
Oh, absolutely.
Cliffhanger.
Like the shocker of even the entire series to date was the ending of episode 1, where you finally see what he's been
cutest freaking thing ever made on this planet. And we got introduced to Baby Yoda. Which
Baby Yoda
is actually not Baby Yoda, if you guys did not know. I'm sure if you've watched The Mandalorian, you know this, but if you haven't, a spoiler, is not Baby Yoda, okay? It is a Yoda species, but we do know he's a baby that's 50 years old.
apparently.
So, yes.
Whether they age at just a really slow rate or their aging process goes in spurts to enter into different stages of life, we have no idea. Total speculation of how you can go from Baby Yoda at 50 years old to 900 years old at Yoda's age when he finally passed.
Yeah. I mean, Yoda was 900, which is.
Yep.
I mean, if you think in those terms, 50 years old being a baby to him being 900, there's not that much of a time span for baby to the grown old man that we saw Yoda as. Yep. So definitely different for that species, which they haven't actually given a name of the species yet, or even named what this thing is. Everybody just went Baby Yoda.
But that's the only thing we have to reference that species to, because even in the beginning, George Lucas specifically kept it secret.
Yeah, I mean,
he kept it mysterious.
I mean, we've had rumors in some of the extended Star Wars lore about other Yoda type species, but never seeing them on screen from the films, anyways. But,
yep. So, and this is the only third showing of this species. We get Yoda throughout all the episodes and wherever we've seen him.
Yeah.
We get another one called Yaddle.
Yaddle. Yep.
Which we only see in episode 1. He's part of the Jedi Council.
Yeah.
And now we have Baby Yoda.
Yeah, we got Baby Yoda.
And because of that, I think it's officially lore that they are very strong genetically in their power to manipulate the Force.
Yeah. Because we see it with Baby Yoda right off the bat.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Spoilers.
Yeah, there's going to be lots of spoilers in this, guys. I mean, technically we're supposed to say spoilers before we say the spoiler, but, we don't really know what we're doing. So we talk, and then we were like, oh, yeah, that was a spoiler. So, oh, by the way, guys, we're going to have spoilers in the show.
Yeah, basically the entire talk about this in the next part 2 is going to be spoilers.
Spoilers, yes.
But yeah. So that ended episode 1. The biggest, everybody got done. They're like, what?
Yep. Baby Yoda.
And then kicked off the phenomenon that is now Baby Yoda across social media, across now toys.
Everywhere. Toys, drawings, all.
It is the new Tickle Me Elmo of this Christmas season.
The art community blew up with Baby Yoda. Anything and everything you can think of. The memes are out of this world right now. Yep. I mean, it is across all video games, down to the dumbest things to the funniest things. It doesn't matter what it is. Baby Yoda has invaded all spaces.
Yes, it has. And that's how they ended episode 1.
Chapter 2. So let's say this. Chapter 1 was not actually called anything from a title standpoint. It was just called The Mandalorian Chapter 1.
Yep.
Chapter 2 actually kicked things off, and they previewed a name. So I thought that was kind of interesting. So this one in Chapter 2 kicked off with the child, which kind of talks about what we're going to be.
Yeah, it's basically just him trying to get off planet. Right?
Yeah.
He's trying to deliver his bounty. So another thing happened at the end of this episode 1 is that the IG-8 unit was tasked to kill the bounty instead of take it alive, and he went to pull his blaster, and next thing you know, you hear a blaster shot, and it's the IG unit with a hole through his head, falling backwards.
So
immediately get a sense of a little bit of morality is starting to slip through here with the Mandalorian.
Yeah, as
at that point, you could say it was he really wanted the bigger reward because he knew the entire stack of Beskar armor was on the line.
Oh yeah.
But really,
yeah, there was a couple of things, and granted, you can't see facial expressions from Mando, but you can see the body mannerisms, and you're right. He does know that all of that metal is sitting there, all of that reward for all of his armor, and that's what he wants. But there was something different too. There's this like relationship forming between him and this Baby Yoda, which has been really cool over the episode. And Chapter 2 really kind of brought that in even more so. So a couple of Easter eggs, well, at least one Easter egg, kind of already talked about it, but Kuil, if you guys didn't know, as soon as the voice spoke for the actor that was playing Kuil, and Kuil is the Ugnaught that we talked about a little bit ago that Mando met, and he is kind of taking on the mentor role. If you guys know anything about writing, there's always a mentor in a good story. If you don't have a mentor, then it's just kind of a bad day. If you look across Lord of the Rings, mentor was Gandalf. If you look in Star Wars, the mentor for the movies was Yoda. Now we've got Kuil for the Mandalorian. So it's a good build up, and I thought Kuil played a really good kind of mentor for the moment that we got to see him. But the actor that played him he's got an iconic voice, and it's Nick Nolte. So like we said earlier, there was that little throwback moment of seeing Kuil, and it really reminded me of The Empire Strikes Back with those Ugnaughts that were on the Cloud City there. And Kuil actually, there was a comment that he made, and he said, I'll never go back to being enslaved, or I don't want to live a life of slavery. And I just think that was a callback to, him understanding and knowing that some of his relatives or previous, people that he knew or or just his race in general, had been enslaved and were working on those scrap lines. Thought it was kind of cool.
Yep. Yep. So we get a lot of that backstory. Um, with throughout that, we get little tidbits of why he's on planet and everything, and he definitely is a different looking Ugnaught.
He is. It's not the typical look.
Yeah.
Chapter 2 was kind of loaded. There was a lot of stuff to this one. So I think
and callbacks too.
Yeah.
I mean, it starts off. It's just him trying to get back to his ship. He's intercepted by another group of bounty hunters, where we really see the lethality of the weapon, as it's for one used kind of a shock in melee as a great melee weapon.
Yeah.
But then when he just wants to finish off one, he shoots it, disintegrates. That bounty hunter's done.
Yeah, gone. The one thing I
Uh-huh.
noticed, and this is one of those little nitpicky things, is the bullet strap that he has around his chest for this weapon. Those bullets never change positions, but he has shot that gun a handful of times. So either he keeps refilling it in the same position and always has that one just kind of lingering, out to the side, and there's nothing between. But then he's got 5 or 6 bullets on the left-hand side. I don't know if he keeps pulling.
He also has an entire arsenal around his ankle too.
He does. Yeah, he's got weapons in every crevice of his suit, everywhere.
Yep.
Literally, you get him rolled up in a ball and you're like, yep, I just won. And, here comes this laser beam out of nowhere and it like saws off your head. So, yeah,
Yep.
They're extremely deadly. So you never know what's
Yep.
coming. That's really what I loved about Boba Fett being, the bounty hunter from way back in the day is, he had all those cool gadgets that he used to use. So I love the new age stuff that we're getting to see here, because now the technology can kind of catch up and you get to see even more cool gadgets, cool tech, and I love it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Going through it, we see him protecting Baby Yoda. He realizing that this bounty was given out to more than one people because of that bounty hunter group that attacked him.
Mm-hmm.
But then he gets back to his ship, and we see something happens to his ship where it's being invaded by one of the most annoying creatures
In the Star
known
Wars
to
galaxy.
any desert residents in the Star Wars galaxy, Jawas.
Yes. The great scrap hoarders of the Star Wars galaxy.
Of the scout, yes, and they are currently tearing apart his ship to the basics, where it's down to its bones. Like there's not much left of the ship. So he goes on a grand journey, trying to take on the entirety of the Sandcrawler and the Jawas.
Which was very
You almost
funny.
think he gets the upper hand, but then they outsmart him and shock him in the chest.
Yeah, it was some good comedy mixed in.
Yes, it was.
It's interesting because now we're getting to see some creatures in the show now too. We got introduced to a mudhorn. If you guys know what a mudhorn is, it's basically a giant iron scaled rhinoceros that is the size of a tank. So,
Yep.
to basically get his ship, the Mando has to get his ship back. It is literally in pieces on the Sandcrawler, and these Jawas have basically tasked him with going down to this mudhorn pit and capturing its egg, which is no small task by any means.
Yep.
So I like the fact that we're getting some of the kind of outlying Star Wars canon creatures in here as well. It's not just people. We're getting to see more of the scenery, more of the creatures, more of the personalities. And it's interesting because we also see Baby Yoda kind of come to life in this as well. They kind of work together as a team. Unbeknownst to Mando, he has got young Yoda with him on this little journey to find the mudhorn and fight him. And it's cool because he's in this little floating baby carrier, and Mando can control it from his wrist. It like follows him around. But this is the first time that we kind of see Baby Yoda come to life, because he actually ends up using the Force here. which was
Well, even before that, we see him attempting to do something. We don't know what, but it's in the beginning of that episode.
we saw him he tried to heal Mando, didn't he?
Or tried to reach out to the wound that Mando had taken that he was then tending to multiple times. So
force healing.
Even though he is a baby, we saw some intellect there.
Yeah,
that was happening. So,
yep.
But yeah, that episode, that part where the Mandalorian had been engaged in combat with the Mudhorn, he was basically losing. He was down.
Oh, absolutely was.
He had held out his and this is another thing that I thought really cool. They perfectly detailed what a vibro blade looks like.
Yeah.
Because up to this point, we had never seen
one.
What a vibro blade actually looks like, what it could be concept like.
Yeah.
We heard it described. But he held it out, and you could see the blade of his, albeit it was a knife.
It was
about a knife.
Yeah.
It was not even 6 inches long. It was vibrating. And we knew, you knew for the fact right there. So I was like, look at there. That's so cool. A little geeked out there. But yeah, he's about to be run over by the Mudhorn, and then
Yoda stops this thing.
Yoda. Yep.
Yeah, baby Yoda literally stops this thing in its tracks and lifts it up off the ground. So it's just kind of hovering there. I thought that was really cool. Mando, of course, is, shocked. He's like, what in the world is going on? But it's funny because he recognizes, because, Mando's been around the galaxy a few times. He knows what's up. He's fought his handful of Jedis as well. So he...
I don't know about that. I don't know if he recognizes it as being used, the Force in action there, because he's walking back to his ship after turning in the egg, which apparently was just a delicacy to the Jawas. He gets all his parts back and is on his way back with Kuiil, and Kuiil asks him, so explain it to me again. He's like, I don't even know. I don't even think I understand what I saw.
Well, I don't think
it could be that he didn't understand that the baby was using the Force, or that he actually understood it was the Force.
I don't think he could sit there and explain, like, hey, I just saw a baby use the Force. But I think he realizes that there's something different about this kid. Like, I think he's I think Mando has probably seen the Force in action before, and this probably caught his eye. So there's definitely something different in their relationship. And like you said earlier, you probably see a little bit of moral difference from him versus some of these other bounty hunters, because they're just strictly just after their bounty. And with Mando, he went against the code. He asked about the bounty, and you're strictly not supposed to do that. So
which gets us into episode 3.
It does get us into episode 3. So yeah, Mando has kind of become a rebel now.
Yep. I mean, you could kind of see it start forming as he's learning things from the Ugnaught, and he even offers to bring him on as a crew, and of course he declines this. He's like, this is home. You did me a great service by ridding this area of these people that were keeping Yoda captive, baby Yoda captive, or just their whatever the little town was, right? He rid them of that chaos that was there. So
yeah,
they parted ways, and the next episode is basically him returning back to this Mos Eisley type area to turn in the bounty. And we see all sorts of different aliens and races from the Star Wars universe going through this.
There were so many callbacks to the different alien races. And I cannot think of the alien race that has the 2 large tentacles that come out of their head. Twi'leks, yes. Multiple. We've seen Twi'leks multiple times now. I think the most famous one, most everybody would realize and know, is the kind of right-hand man of Jabba the Hutt. He was he was probably the most famous one that we've had to date. And there's been others.
We see, throughout the animated, throughout the other TV shows, we see some come as prominence throughout the prequels.
Oh yeah. There was a.
Hopefully, we'll even see some more coming out in the next movies that are going to be happening, like Rise of the Skywalker. We'll see.
Yeah, definitely. Very prominent species in the Star Wars galaxy. So,
But yeah, we're in episode 3 now, so he's turning in his bounty, and just going into the same building which he walked into and accepted the bounty from this Imperial warlord leader. You can see he's protective of the kid already.
oh yeah,
Because he's
absolutely.
like, hey, be careful with that. To the stormtrooper, he's immediately watching over them as they inspect Baby Yoda. And just as he goes to grab the Beskar, which the guy was like, here, you've earned it. They take off Baby Yoda. He asks, what are you going to do with the kid? And the Imperial warlord immediately comes back and is like, you don't ask those types of questions
Right.
when you're part of the Bounty Hunters Guild.
Yeah. So I mean, it was like a setback for him. He kind
Yeah,
of
he was like, watch
wait.
your, you don't ask that. You know you're not supposed to ask that.
Right.
Be on your way.
So I mean, that really set the tone for, I think, Mando's character right there, for me anyways. There's a connection that he's got now with Baby Yoda, that he is, yes, he's still a bounty hunter, but he has gone against his guild. And chapter 3 is even called the sin. So I mean, they hold this so high that they call it a sin. He's basically turned a rebel and gone against, everything that he's raised and everything that he's known. But why do you think Mando went against his code and asked about his bounty? Like, why this one time?
Well, one thing to differentiate is he had 2 different codes applied to him. He had the code of the Mandalorian and then the code of the Bounty Hunters Guild, which he was a part of.
True.
And the Mandalorian code allowed the Bounty Hunter code to coexist. You could adopt them both. So the sin I see applied to this is part of his, you can see it initially start. He starts going against it when he asks that first question, right?
Yeah.
Then he goes back to, you can almost see his remorse as he's taken this entire stack of Beskar armor
Yeah.
to the blacksmith, to get made into a full set of armor.
Right.
You can see that throughout there because he, according to the Mandalorian code, once you create new armor, the beast, person, or thing that you took on to gain this award is now going to be your signet. It's like a badge of honor for you.
Yeah.
But he says it wasn't a noble kill because his prey helped him, and the blacksmith is confused by this. And then he explains the prey didn't know it was prey
Right.
at the time.
Well,
So-
and, the blacksmith even stamps him with the mudhorn symbol still. So I mean, that becomes his signet. But I don't know. To me, I think you kind of nailed it on the head when you said there's 2 different codes that Mando's living by. So he's got the bounty hunter code, which not all bounty hunters are Mandalorians. We've seen multiple different races, and just like anything, some are absolute slugs, and some do have moral standards, some don't. Some are just straight up, street thugs, and they're out to make extra buck. Mando's different, though. Mando was an orphan. He was adopted by a very well-off culture and had a family, was raised up with family values. I mean, did they have wars? Did they have things that they struggled with? Absolutely. But I think the sin wasn't relating to him going against the bounty hunter code. I think to him, in my mind, the sin was not adopting this kid and doing the right thing, because he was taken in. He was adopted.
I see that point.
He wasn't of the same race that the Mandalorians were, but yet people still took him in. They raised him. They gave him a home. And I think there's maybe a little bit of a connection there with him. Like, I now have this thing that I need to look after and take care of. To me, that's what I got out of it anyways.
Yeah, I can see that point. I went the more, I would say the obvious connection that it was a sin against the bounty hunter, but definitely see that connection there. That it was a sin against his own conscience, his own raising a part of the Mandalorian code, that he should have protected this thing.
Yeah.
And we see that that he, you know, he starts to build into that he tries to make rights for his wrong, that he immediately goes back to, I lost his name, Grief.
Yeah, Grief.
Asking for more jobs, and then asks him who he gave bounties to. He accepts a job just to get out of system, and then asks if he knows what's going to happen to Baby Yoda
again. Which
so
definitely a connection there. So there was another interesting point in chapter 3 that happened that I think kind of shows Mando's character. And when he went back to get Baby Yoda from this facility that he had gone in to get his reward from, that's where they were holding Baby Yoda, and he kept asking, what are they going to be doing to him? And he ends up going back at a later point to pick up Baby Yoda. And the doctor that was there, his name was Dr. Pershing, when he walked into this basically medical room, they had Baby Yoda tied up to this table, and you could tell they were doing tests and stuff on him. Of course, he was out like a light. But Mando let that doctor live. And he said, well, what kind of experiments were you running on him? Why were you doing these experiments on him? And it was kind of a cryptic moment. There wasn't a whole lot of information given, but Mando did let the doctor live for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think he believed him because the doctor said that, what I just did saved this kid's life.
Yeah.
Because, right before that point, he uses, which was also another really cool tech, of either his heads-up display of his helmet, or according to some Wikipedias, it was the rifle itself, allowed him to hear, people talking through walls.
Oh, yeah, I do remember that point.
He hears that leader tell the doctor, extract what you need and get out, get done with it. So, and we can tell from the onset that Pershing was wanted the kid alive, because when the warlord said, "Hey, you can bring him back alive, or at a reduced fee, you can bring him back dead," and the doctor was shocked at that. He's like, "That's not that's not the agreement."
Right.
So you can tell the doctor has some morality to him, and I think the Mando connected that.
Yeah.
Where he doesn't shoot him, because also you can see all of his actions are part of necessity. He had no need to shoot the doctor.
Yeah,
he's got the kid, so he left.
He's very calculated. Like there's not unnecessary things done. He's extremely smart, which I think is why it's what makes him so good.
Yep.
But
and I've seen one term referred to his fighting style is a very elite scrapper. Meaning he pulls out every trick in the book. He doesn't have one fighting style. He doesn't have one type of way to take on an adversary. It is every trick in the book you can think of, from knocking a box into a person to cable around their neck and pull them back, or just outright one-arm fist fight against stormtroopers.
Yeah. He's one of my favorite scenes in the movie is when he walks into that room with the stormtroopers and the Empire warlord, and they walk in and go, "There's 5 of us," and he goes, "I like those odds."
Yeah,
it was great.
So he's extremely confident.
Yeah, he's extremely confident. He's extremely skilled in hand-to-hand combat, tech, tracking, blaster work. He's a very skilled pilot. So. I mean, the dude knows his stuff. He's straight up a bad A.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We can see that from the onset. And, he single-handedly rescues Baby Yoda, gets out of the building, which leads to another really scene of technology we haven't seen yet of a Mandalorian, which apparently is part of their ability to make tech, is these whistling birds that we see the blacksmith craft for him.
Yeah.
And she says, hey, they're rare because they require Beskar to create. But he's in that room, Force troopers, guns trained on him. And he lowers down Baby Yoda. And then he just grips and activates the whistling birds. And they just whistle around the room, tracking the targets. Boom. All the stormtroopers are dead.
And done. Yeah.
Done. I don't even know if we've seen that technology or that thing used from a Mandalorian yet. But that was pretty cool.
It was very cool. Yeah, some really cool tech. Basically, the whole last bit of this show was filled with technology and just him trying to get out of the city with Baby Yoda, and that kind of goes back to him having that moral ground and I think doing the right thing. But this is where we get to see Grief Karga come in again as well, because he's now put a bounty out on the Mandalorian because he's betrayed the bounty hunters in their eyes. So you've got the bounty hunters in the city now after Mando, which was a very interesting little plot twist.
Yep. As soon as he leaves the building, we can see that all of a sudden, basically every bounty hunter in that city has now been sicked on him.
Oh yeah, all heck broke loose.
Yeah, I mean they all train up. They obviously are entitled to that. The bounty is back on the table. The Mandalorian has it, and they all want to take it.
Yeah,
him dead, not him. Of course, it's Baby Yoda.
Yeah,
they want to take him dead or alive, and yeah, it turns out to a quick gunfight, showing off Mandalorian skills because he's able to survive and actually pin down the entire entire little group there.
Hundreds of guys, not 2 or 3.
Yeah, no, he was surrounded, and he takes them all on, is able to pin them down for a little while, up until they almost get the upper hand, and is probably then the coolest scene so far of the Mandalorian is when one of the dudes takes a rocket to the chest. We see this random rocket come out of somewhere.
Yeah, that was great.
And you just know, if you're part of Star Wars lore, you know where that rocket came from.
Absolutely.
And sure enough, it's confirmed seconds later, Mandalorians start jetpacking in.
Yep.
And assisting their brother.
One of the greatest scenes in the show. No matter a Mandalorian's difference of that person, they're brothers in arms, and they will always back one another. And that's a really cool call to their loyalty for one another, which
we kind of skipped over it during the blacksmith scene, but because of the bringing in of that, the Beskar, and there's one particular Mandalorian that came in, a big bruiser.
He was a big bruiser.
Of a Mandalorian.
He has some different colored armor on, and it's blue, which stands out. And I don't remember the color coding for blue on their armor, what it means. I remember what the green, red, and gold means, but not the blue.
Reliability.
Oh yes, reliability. Yeah.
Yep.
And he was a big dude.
Wikipedia.
Like, he towered over Mando.
Yeah, but he was reasonably upset because the Beskar was stamped with Imperial symbol.
Yeah.
And he showed the Mandalorians that were gathering, awing at the bounty and score that the Mando had just brought in to then create his armor.
He basically called him a sellout.
Yeah, called him a sellout right there.
Yeah, like where's your loyalty, and why? Basically,
because the Empire.
Yeah, basically called him Empire scum.
Yeah, Empire lover, right? Because the Empire was the one that came and basically ransacked their entire planet for the Beskar armor. And and it's just the way the Empire was running things. So, there was a scrap. They had vibra blades at each other's throats, and that's when the blacksmith stepped back in and said, we also see another thing about the Mandalorian code is about the helmet. We don't know the details of why, but apparently you're never supposed to show another being
your face. Yeah.
And so when you're in public or going to be with them or be anywhere that you could be witnessed by somebody, you have your helmet on and never take it off. And it's part of the code, right? Yeah. It's also part of being a part of the clan. So at least this particular clan in general, I think there were some in the animated series that didn't follow that rule and took their helmet off. Yeah. But this particular one, that was part of their code.
Yeah, it's very interesting. When you mentioned helmets, and we talked about it earlier, but some of the different colorings on the armor definitely needs to be mentioned. So the Mandalorians, in one of the episodes here, it may have actually been chapter 3, we got to see some different Mandalorians guarding the secret entrance to the guild and
Yep.
the clan. And a lot of them had that Boba Fett look to them. So a lot of people were even questioning, well, is that Boba Fett? Well, no, it's not, because Boba Fett died in the Return of the Jedi. But
Yep. So far, he's still dead.
so far, he's still dead. We haven't seen any resurrections, and I don't think we're going to, unless some type of crazy miracle happens and they go back in time.
In legend, he survives by thermal detonator, but they retcon that. So according to lore,
yes,
modern lore, he's still dead.
But the armor coloration was pretty much identical. So if you look at the armor, the green on their helmets and their armor have a meaning, and so does the red around their visors. Mm-hmm. So the green helmet actually means duty, and the red outlined visor means that they are honoring a parent, which I thought was very specifically called out. Most of the Mandalorians are foundlings, so they were raised, and probably a lot of them were orphaned, so they probably did have a parent. Mando did not, though. He didn't have that red and green outlined helmet, except for the very beginning.
I wonder, right? Which is, I was just looking over that.
Yeah,
I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. It's seen that majority of his armor was a burgundy red. Yeah. Which you could, and would make sense because he was honoring his parents.
He was,
or he could very well be honoring his parents that he lost. In the Galactic Civil War that took place. Mm-hmm. So right before he was adopted by the guild clans of the Mandalorian,
and then
or the Mandalore.
The Mandalore, yeah. I think the other call out here was the blacksmith. She wore a very specific helmet. Looked very different from your typical, and it was the color of gold. And gold actually means vengeance in the Mandalorian culture. So if that ties back to maybe her having a ill will towards something, or maybe she is still got something on the plate that she's wanting vengeance for. I don't know, but that gold helmet is there for a reason, for sure.
Yeah. Yep. And then they give their motto right before they've got this scrap between the Mando and the other Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Vibroblades, and it is the way. No, this is the way, right? Yes. Because our code is the way of life. Yep, this is the way. And we see that called out where after they invade the Bruiser, he's right there. He lands right there next to Mandalorian, and he's like, "Go, we'll hold them off." And they look at each other, and he goes, "This is the way." Yeah. And then they go part their ways. So before we leave episode 3, we definitely gotta call out probably the cutest part so far in the episode, where let's see, what was it? Early in the episode, we see on his ship, Baby Yoda tried to come up to one of the instruments and screw off.
I do remember the little ball on the shifter.
Little ball.
Yes.
Yep.
And we actually see that later in episodes as well. That little shifter knob kind of becomes a toy. And I thought that was funny. Yeah.
Which actually, it was, Baby Yoda got it off of there and was playing with it, and it is when Mandalore went back to his ship to take that random bounty that he accepted to go finally leave the planet, he saw the knob was missing, and then he recalled to Baby Yoda. He puts it back on, and the conflict starts, the internal conflict starts, and that's when he makes the decision to go back. Yeah. But then it's really cute at the end of the episode. All you see is this. I'm actually pulling it up right now. He doesn't even see Yoda. You just see him reach forward and unscrew it, and all of a sudden you see this tiny little hand come up. And grab it and pull it back down. So absolutely, that was good, and it does, to your point, become a toy in future episodes. Yeah. So
Baby Yoda, best character. Baby Yoda. One of the best characters ever made.
Yeah, and we even get to see more of him. Yeah. Go into episode 4, which starts out different. It doesn't actually focus on Mandalorian anymore.
Yeah, this was a different feel. And real quick, a couple of Easter eggs that I thought was kind of fun for Chapter 4. We get to see a different pace to this one as well. It's a lot slower than the previous three, but
Yep.
to kick everything off, you kind of open up into a very vast open scenery. So Mando is heading to a place called Sorgan. It's basically a farming community. It's a farming world. There's not a whole lot there, but they open up to a bunch of farmers farming krill. If you didn't know, krill are they're an actual real thing in the world, but in Star Wars, galaxy, their whole thing is they are created to make food, but they're also created to make a specific drink. It's kind of cool too because first time we get to see them on the screen. They've been mentioned before in previous lore, and also the Star Wars visual encyclopedia that was created. We get to see a little bit on their expanded creature universe, and the krill were part of it. So those krill, if you've watched any Star Wars films or shows, you've probably seen a neon blue drink that people get. And that drink is actually called spotchka, and it is created by krill. That's why they farm these things, so they can make it. And then
I didn't actually realize that until seeing your note here that the blue drink they were talking about was made from them.
That's how they make them. So that if you look at the krill, they got like this neon blue color when they pull them out of the water.
Yep.
And it makes this drink. And then the second really cool Easter egg that I saw was the species of, they're not really bounty hunters. They're more like henchmen almost, but it's the dog face species that we've seen in Star Wars before, called the Klatooinians. And we've seen them before, and it was in Return of the Jedi on Jabba's basically barge. As they were heading into the desert lands, there was a bounty hunter on his barge called Barado, and it was one of these Klatooinians. So,
yep, and we see this village that is krill farmers get attacked, and basically it's one of those situations where farmers exist, and there's these warlord type band of these Klatooinians that come in every once in a while and they pilfer the goods, right? From this farmer and probably the other farmers in the area, so that they can make money off it or whatever they were doing with it. So we see that, and then it sets up for pans right to now the Mandalorian as he goes to pick this planet, which is Sorgan.
Yeah, he picked it because it was so desolate of things. I mean, there was just a few, farming communities. There were no large cities. It was kind of off grid. Probably a good place to hide, right? So that's why he chose it.
Yep. And we're just gonna have to call it every cute moment of Baby Yoda in here. But one that also turned into a huge meme across the social medias is where he's sitting at the controls and he goes over and flicks the switch, and the Mandalorian's like, he turns that off. He said, "Don't touch anything."
Don't touch anything. Yes.
And while looking at the Mandalorian, he reaches over and touches the button. Again.
It's funny because it is so real. The same thing happened. So my oldest son, when he was a baby, he was that kid. So we're having this conversation with him. He does something, and I look at him and go, don't touch that. And what's he do? He looks me straight in the eyes, and his little arm reaches out and he touches what I just told him not to. And it was the look of, what are you going to do about it? And
what are you going to do?
That was the look that Baby Yoda gave the bounty hunter, like, what you going to do about it, punk?
Yep, yeah. And you see this little characteristic that he doesn't listen to the Mandalorian most times. A lot of a childlike aspect in this episode coming from Baby Yoda, where he's like trying to grab onto things, and it's like, okay, I need you to stay here. Nope, Baby Yoda wants to come along.
He's got the baby mentality, for sure.
Yep,
almost the puppy mentality.
I would consider it almost like puppy mentality.
Yeah.
because there's interesting tidbits of intellect shown in there to childlike also mentality as well, where he just wants to interact with stuff and explore the world, so yeah, it's him coming to. He finds this basically bar in a hut.
Yeah,
right.
It was bar in a very remote hut.
Yep, very remote hut. He gets Baby Yoda set up, and he immediately knows this interesting character, which he's concerned about because he wants to be left alone. Mm-hmm. He wants to just wait out time for the bounties to go away with Baby Yoda. And then that interesting character just disappears. So he immediately assigns the bartender to be babysitter, and heads outside.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah, this is it was interesting too, because when we first see this character he's talking about, what set him off was her pauldron that she's wearing on her shoulder, because it's a callback to what she used to be, and they have a meeting outside, not the talking kind, with fists, with fists, I'm gonna beat the crap out of you, and she holds her own for sure.
It's one of the few people, I think that's the only person so far in the episode that has been able to hold her own with no armor on against the Mandalorian.
Yeah. So the character we're talking about is actually, we were introduced to a character named Cara Dune, and we find out that she used to be a shock trooper. So she actually has a bounty on her head, and she was doing the same thing that Mando was doing. She was hiding in this remote planet called Sorgan, and they kind of have this conversation after beating the crap out of one another, and she says, look, I was here first, find yourself another planet. And she ends up kind of making an ally. They end up kind of becoming friends in a sense, in a weird sense. Like I said, this episode was a lot slower paced, but also had some really good content, I think. So
yeah, we also see more of his character of the Mandalorian, because he gets to the village of the Krill farmers by story elements, and even the lady there of the almost kind of pseudo leader of this little village. Mm-hmm. She has a daughter, and she asks about the helmet, because even at this remote area, the legend of the Mandalorian is told out here, and how they're fiercest and one of the greatest fighters in the universe. So, but they also know the stories about the helmets and some of the code they go by. So she asks about it. She asks about when was the last time you shown somebody else your face?
Yeah.
And he points to the kid. He said, I was their age. So, which tells us that it was right after the point that he lost his parents in the Galactic Civil War. He was adopted by the Mandalorians, and thereby been abiding by their code ever since.
Yeah. I mean, it's just who he is. I mean, he knows, he knows nothing else. So, I think his decision he made to kind of leave Baby Yoda behind, there was a little bit of a moment where I think there was a want to have a relationship and to do something else. You kind of see that, like you said, that pseudo leader of this krill farmers group had come in and made a, relationship with Mando. She kind of took care of him, gave him a place to stay, brought him food, asked him some questions about when was the last time, you took your face mask off. And you could tell there was a connection there. And there was a little bit of a pause when she was reaching up to grab his helmet and take it off. Like, do I want to be done with this life almost? That's what I got from it anyways. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Part of him is yearning for that stable livelihood, right?
Yeah. I think he's kind of done with the running at this point.
Yep. But before that point, we see more of him where he's willing to team up with this Imperial shock trooper once he finds out, to go into the farm to protect them against these bandits. There we go, bandits.
Bandits was what I was looking for earlier.
Yeah, these bandits hounding this village. They set out and immediately notate they've bitten off more than they can chew because these bandits have an ATST, which they find out from the tracks.
Did we also learn that this is the last ATST? Somewhere I heard that this was the last ATST.
I wouldn't say it would be the last. It's whatever was here was something left over from Imperial occupation, or they got their hands on it and got to this planet.
Maybe that's what I was
and
thinking.
They just took it over.
It was just the last one on the planet.
Yeah, it was something that was scavenged. It was still in operation, and these bandits happened to get their hands on it. Thereby, they are now terrorizing and controlling this area.
Which is crazy. They did a really good job with. This thing is old, beat to heck. It is rusted. There's moss growing on it, but they did a good job with the whole bounty hunter shock trooper connection with the farmers. We want to help them, and we want to take out these hooligans that are hoarding these materials, right? But seeing this,
and I got to say, one of the bring a very horror aspect into this movie is when they finally unleash their plan to take on the bandits and poke the bear per se. So they go in, they blow up stuff, and they're like, okay, we're waiting on them to come attack the village. Then you can just see, all of a sudden you see these red eyes. It's the canopy of the ATST light up, and it stands up and enter in a very horror type, I'm running away from something very big and scary that's shooting me. And the way they portray this ATST has probably been the most animal-like that I've ever seen them portrayed, and it fits so well.
Oh, yeah.
The way it walked, the way it moved back and forth, even its, I'm going to call it decisions, when it got to the village and was sitting on the edge of the water and knew not to go no further. You could argue that was the driver's decision, but it very much felt like this beast, this feared animal that you didn't want to take on. Like, you're going to go, hey, this dragon's terrorizing me, right? It's going to have some intellect to it.
Right, it was very intimidating.
It's not just going to step into the water, right?
Yeah.
So
it was a really, really good job of bringing old Empire tech back in. And I liked this. I really liked this episode because they slowed things down and they did give some more character to, what was going on between Mando and the kid and these farmers. And I think even Kara and her character, you definitely saw some of that connection. You saw that moral connection that she even had with Mando and these farmers. A shock trooper was no thing to scoff at back in the day. They were hardcore.
Right. I mean, they were like the best of the best of a trooper standpoint.
Yeah, they were definitely elites.
But also what's interesting is she was a rebellion shock trooper. So she tells a story about going in and cleaning up Imperial places.
Yeah. So she's seen some stuff for sure.
Yes. She alludes to that it was a you go in, do stuff, no questions asked, get us the area type of shock trooper. Which is why she was so hardened and also a great fighter as well.
I'm anxious to see more on her. I definitely think they'll definitely bring her back.
They have to.
Yeah.
They really have to. Even though they left her at the end of it, you feel like she's left on the planet and gonna stay there for her sanctuary.
Yeah, no,
which
I think
ironically is the title of that episode.
Yeah, it's called Sanctuary. So, but we find out that that's not Mando's last staying place because they're towards the end. We actually find out that another bounty hunter has showed up on Sorgan after they have defeated the Klatooinians, and they've kind of reclaimed the farmer's land for them. We find out that there's a new bounty hunter that has come into their space after Baby Yoda, and they take him out. So really no place.
Well, and that's also that's where it shifts from. Up until that point, he had been assumed that they were tracking him. Yeah. But then, according to the fob of that bounty hunter, it wasn't tracking him. It was tracking the kid. So he knows that he can't. Yeah. He has to always be with the kid to protect him. He can't just leave the kid.
He can't just leave him now. So, Yeah, that really changed the pace of the show, and I think sets them up for a really big success as long as they tie things together correctly. And Disney has had some flops with a few of their solo based stories. They were really good movies, but in a sense they were flops
Yep.
from a story standpoint and the fan base. This is a little different. We've got some episodic, bases, and Disney has a chance to really, really tell a good story. So I think we're going in the right direction. This one is just covering the first 4 episodes. Our series 2 of this will actually be covering the last 4 episodes, which we're on episodes 5 and 6. 7 comes out here next week, and then 8 the week after that.
Yes, and so far it's been a everybody looks forward to the Friday release. So I'll bet they change it up for next week. It's gonna be Wednesday.
It'll be Wednesday
because
yes.
they don't want to interact with the Rise of Skywalker launch.
Yep, that is coming out December 20th.
20th.
Yep.
Got my tickets. I'm going.
We have ours. We will be going as well. So expect another podcast review of the last Star Wars film, including the Skywalkers.
Yes, that is coming.
That is coming for sure. I'm excited about this movie. I really, really am. Well, guys, I hope you all have enjoyed this episode. This has been a lot of fun just to break down all of our favorite parts of The Mandalorian. And Victus, I know you are extremely prepped and ready for episodes 5, 6, 7, and 8, because 5 and 6 have been amazing. We just finished watching those a couple of nights ago, and they are packed and loaded with tons of Easter eggs and tons of exciting updates and news to this story. So I can't wait to get chapter 2 recorded.
Absolutely. And again, thank you guys for tuning in. We enjoy creating this content and greatly appreciate that you guys enjoy listening to this content of us going and talking about different things, all things geekery. But don't forget, we got a new home, which you can find us at anchor.fm/all things geekery. If you did enjoy this episode, be sure to subscribe to All Things Geekery podcast with any of your favorite podcasting apps, or drop us a review on iTunes or Spotify.
Yeah, and you guys can find the ATG family out on our social spaces, specifically Twitter. You can find myself, that's at Detached, with an X before and after the name. You can find Victus out there. He is under a new handle, and that is at VictusTTV. And you can find our podcasting Twitter. You can find all our shenanigans and talk out there at the ATG Cast. And you guys can also join our community Discord, and I will make sure that all of those links are in the show notes below.
And if you guys would like to tune in for some live gaming content, I stream over on Twitch Monday through Friday in the evenings, 8 to midnight. You can find me at twitch.tv/Victus Dark Arrow.
Yeah, and also we have a brand new partner on the podcast, guys, and it is Into the AM. So if you and your friends want some really sweet clothing, we now have a code you guys can use. So go to www.intotheam.com, check out their gear, and if you guys want, just type in ATG at checkout, and you can get 10% off of your entire checkout. But guys, that wraps up this podcast. So as always, you guys stay awesome, and we will see you in the next episode.